Hi there, this is Science Grade 9, Module 1, Week 1 to 2, Respiratory and Circulatory Systems Working with Other Organ Systems. Please prepare your pen, paper, and your module. We are going to talk about these things, so get ready. Alright, let's go. Today, let's start our Module 1 objective. At the end of this module, you should be able to explain how the respiratory and circulatory systems work together to transport nutrients, gases, and other molecules to and from the different parts of the body. This is our main objective, but of course we have some other objectives, so let's try to get to know more. So in continuation of this module, in Lesson 1, we are going to identify the parts of the human respiratory system. Lesson 2, we are going to describe and explain the functions of the human respiratory system. In Lesson 3, we are going to explain, trace, and show the breathing mechanism in humans and how do we inhale and exhale. And in continuation in Week 2, we have Lesson 4. So in Lesson 4, we are going to identify and describe the parts and functions of the human circulatory system. Plus, we will have also an additional activity which we are going to relate to our present situation right now. How is COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 related to this topic? Okay, so let's get started. In the human body, it is stated that man can survive with days without water, as well as with food. But do you agree that humans cannot survive without breathing, without oxygen? Yes, this is true to all. All living creatures need oxygen to breathe and to survive. Seconds without oxygen may deteriorate all functions in the body system. So, in that case, we may probably die. So it is said that without oxygen, we can never live on this planet Earth. Do you agree? Yes, of course. So that is why we need to take good care of our body very well. And we need to secure our surroundings. In our present situation right now, we have to take care of our respiratory system and circulatory system, especially fighting from COVID-19 and other forms of viruses. These are communicable diseases that we have to fight against with. So, let us try to know more about our respiratory system. This is our respiratory system, and this is how your body looks like inside. But what is a respiratory system? A respiratory system consists of organs in the body that help us to breathe. Meaning we inhale and we exhale. We take in oxygen and we give off carbon dioxide. Respiration is linked to breathing. So when you are breathing, it is termed as respiration. The respiratory system does two very important things. It brings oxygen into our bodies and gets rid of carbon dioxide. So that is why it is important for us to learn more about these systems. Okay, so let's continue. Now, let's dig deeper to our human respiratory system. We have the first part. We inhale through our nose, where it is warmed, moistened, and filtered. But if in case that we have runny nose or colds, or we cannot breathe through our nose, what do we use then as an alternative for the air to pass through? Yes, that's right. We have our mouth. We can use our mouth to breathe in air. Now, let's assume that the air goes to our nose. So, when the air goes through our nose, it is warmed, moistened, and filtered through our nasal cavity. As the air enters from the nose to the nasal cavity, then it goes to our pharynx. What is pharynx? Pharynx controls the passage of air to the lungs and food to the esophagus. Then, what happens next? Of course, there are times that our body needs to identify if it is food or air. In this case, food has to be kept out of the larynx. So, this function is carried out by the epiglottis. So the epiglottis closes and opens. If it opens, it means there is food. If it closes, meaning there is an air coming through. So it closes and the air goes to our larynx. Our larynx is what you call our voice box. It is connected to the pharynx, to the trachea as well. It contains the vocal cords. It prevents the passage of food into the lungs, and it controls the flow of air going to the lungs. Our vocal cords may change through time. It depends to the maturity of our body. When it becomes hollow or narrow, it creates different sound for every person. Now, as the air enters the trachea, this is the main passageway of air into the lungs, going down to our lungs. Our lungs help us to have oxygen that we breathe so that it can enter to the red blood cells and get rid of carbon dioxide when we breathe out. Next is our bronchi. This is the main tube connected from our trachea. The bronchi, or what we call bronchus, carry air into each lung. Next is our bronchiole, or bronchioles. These are the tiny tubes, as you can see in the picture, that is connected to our bronchi and also connecting our alveoli or alveolar sacs. There are different names for this. Sometimes it is called alveoli or alveolus. Sometimes alveolar sacs. It depends to the grammar. Of course, if you say sacs, that means a bunch of alveoli or alveolus. Okay? So what is the purpose of alveolar sacs or alveoli? The exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in these sacs takes place. So this is where it is entering inside and outside in our body. Next is our diaphragm. Our diaphragm controls the breathing process. So when we breathe in, breathe out, this expands, going up or going down. Okay? So, now you know the different parts of the human respiratory system. It's time for us to have a little test if we can be familiar of these parts. Let's go! Now it's time for you to answer what I have learned. This time you are going to answer the following. You can stop or replay this video if needed, okay, so that you can understand it better. Alright, let's keep going. Now, I'm expecting that you are already done in the different parts of the human's respiratory system. This time, we are going to focus on the different parts and functions. Okay, let's start. So, this is how it is done. Let's try to recap Where does the air enter? Yes, that's right, through the nose. Or if it's not possible, it can enter through your mouth. Very good. Now, where does it go if it enters the nose? Yes, you're correct. It goes through your nasal cavity. Very good. Now, from your nasal cavity, what happens to the air inside? It is warmed, moistened, and filtered. Very good. And then, where does the air go now? It goes to the pharynx. That's right. What is happening in the pharynx? In the pharynx, it controls the passage of air to the lungs and food to the esophagus. But how does the body know if it is air or food? Which one closes? Yes, that's right. It's the epiglottis. It's the one that closes if there is air inside our body. And how about this long, narrow tube? What do you call this one? This is what you call your trachea. Very good. Oh, how about this part in here? What do you call this? Yes, that is right. It is your voice box or your larynx. It contains your vocal cords and it regulates the passage of air to the trachea connected to the lungs. Now, going down, what do you call these main branches in here? These are what you call? Yes, these are your lungs. You have one pair of lungs. So we have two lungs inside our body. And the main branches are what you call your bronchi, which is connected directly to the lungs. Inside our lungs, we have small branches. What do you call these small branches in here? Oh, please be reminded that these small branches are what you call your bronchiole or bronchioles if there are many, okay? And we have also our small sacs, or we call them as alveoli, alveolus, or alveolar sacs. Okay, very good. And the last part is your, very good, your diaphragm. This is the one that expands and controls the breathing process as you inhale and exhale. Alright, now we're set and let's go to our next page. This time, let's try to look at this picture. I know that you have this one in your module and you're familiar of this one already. This is a drawing of a bunch of grapes model of the respiratory system. If you try to look at it, we have the part in here which is the trachea, the bronchi, the bronchioles, and the alveoli. Now, how does the air breathe in and breathe out? Okay, let's try to know more. Now, let's continue. Are you familiar of this experiment? You remember this? With just looking at it, I know you're familiar with this. We have in here an illustration of an experiment using some straws, plastic bottle, and balloons. Now, do you know what does these materials represent? Yes, that's right. It's our respiratory system. The balloon below is what you call or representing your diaphragm. The two balloons inside represents your, very good, your lungs. And the two main tubes represents your, that is right, your bronchi. And the main tube above is representing your trachea. Very good. This is a model of the respiratory system, where it illustrates the human breathing mechanism model. Now, what happens when we exercise? When we exercise, breathing rate increases. In that case, we breathe faster and deeper, right? Why do we do that? Because this is to get more oxygen to the cells of our body and get rid of carbon dioxide and water. Now, the oxygen we breathe combines with glucose or the sugar to release energy. This energy can be released as a form of heat. This is why we feel hot and sweaty. So we exhale, our diaphragms are relaxed, and when we inhale, it expands. So it expands and contracts. Let me show you a real diagram of how does the lungs breathe in and breathe out air. Let's go. Alright, now let me help you and let me explain further. This is our lungs. Do you observe how does the air go in and out of our lungs? Great. When you inhale, or the process of inhalation, the ribs move outward. So the diaphragm moves downward. There's a diaphragm over here. There is now more space in the chest area, so the air rushes in to fill the space. In exhalation, or when you exhale, the ribs move inward. So the diaphragm moves upward, going up. There is now less space in the chest area. Because of this pressure, air moves out of the lungs. And that's how inhalation and exhalation happens. Okay? Very good. Let's go. It's time for you to do your activity. Of course, you are given time for this, so you can stop, pause, or replay this video if you needed to. Okay? No worries. Just take your time. Let's go. Alright, now this time we are going to talk about our circulatory system. Now, what is the relationship of respiratory and circulatory system? There is a big relationship between the two. But before we go deeper to the relationship of circulatory and respiratory system, let's try to define what is the circulatory system. Circulatory system is a complex network of blood vessels that reaches all parts of our body. This network supplies the cells, tissues, and organs with oxygen and nutrients, and eliminates carbon dioxide and waste compounds. The circulatory system is also called the cardiovascular system, where there is a network consisting of blood vessels, and the heart. So, do you know the parts of the heart? If not, well, that's okay because we are going to talk about the parts of the heart. Let's go! Alright, now let's talk about our heart. This is the image of our heart. Hold your fist closely and try to look at it carefully. On how big your fist is, that's how big your heart is. Yes, that is based on scientific truth. So, if your fist is small, then you have a small heart. But of course, it may be different somehow to other people. But in general, somehow, it is possible to be like that. Okay, so let's try to know more about the heart and how does the air or oxygen enters our heart and how it becomes oxygenated. So once it enters the heart, the air is still deoxygenated. That's why it's color blue. Okay? So the deoxygenated air goes inside our superior vena cava. Then it enters to our pulmonary vein. Are you following? Great. From our pulmonary vein, it goes right to our right atrium. This is your right atrium in here. This is the space where the oxygenated air is coming through. Also, there's another entrance of the oxygenated air below. This is what you call your inferior vena cava. So that the oxygenated air goes to the right atrium. Same with the superior vena cava. Once the air is inside, it is pushed towards the tricuspid valve. So the tricuspid valve opens and it enters to our right ventricle. Now the ventricles pumps the air towards our pulmonary valve. And then from our pulmonary valve, it goes outside and then it goes to the lungs. So this exit is going to the lungs. Okay? Great. Alright, now, how about the oxygenated blood? How does it enter the heart? Of course, from our aorta, somehow. Okay, but we call this as the pulmonary vein. Okay, so the pulmonary vein, from the pulmonary vein, the air enters inside to our left atrium and then pushed towards, okay, and the mitral valve opens. As the mitral valve opens, the air goes down and the left ventricle contracts and pumps the air going to the aortic valve. Okay, so the aortic valve opens and it goes outside. Okay, so it goes outside to the aorta, going to the different parts of the body, and also it can also be in here in this part, lower proportion of the pulmonary vein or pulmonary valve. Okay, so it goes down and goes to the different parts of the body. Okay, so let me just clarify things with you. Inside our heart, there are two kinds of tubes, the exit and entrance, for the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. Just remember that for oxygenated, we have the superior vena cava as the entrance, and the exit would always be the pulmonary artery. Okay? Alright. So just remember the SUPA, superior vena cava, for the oxygenated, and the exit is pulmonary artery. For oxygenated, the entrance is the pulmonary vein and the exit is the aorta. Okay? Alright, there we go. Very good. Okay, so we have two kinds of ventricle inside the heart. We have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. These are the ones that pumps the air outside the heart. Okay? And we have four valves inside the heart. Valves are the small openings of the air inside the heart. We call them the mitral valve, the aortic valve, the pulmonary valve, and the tricuspid valve. Okay? So don't get confused, okay? So this is how it is. Alright, so let's continue. Alright, so we have in here our heart. Okay, so from the body, it goes inside and then outside, going to the lungs. From this proportion, from the lungs, then going to the body. Okay, so that's how it is. Alright, so thank you so much, and I hope that you learned. Let's go! Alright, the second thing that we have inside the heart is, of course, or in our circulatory system, is the blood vessels. Okay, the blood vessels are in different kinds or parts as well. Okay, and sometimes you call this as roots inside your body, but these are not roots. These are what you call blood vessels. Okay, the main branch of the vessel is what you call, for the oxygenated blood, we call this as vein, and the lower proportions of it are what you call the venules. And for the right side, we have the oxygenated blood. Okay, the blood vessel for that is the artery, and the smaller branches of the artery are what you call arterioles or arteriole. Okay, it's just one branch. And in between, there is an exchange of gases. Okay, so once the deoxygenated blood goes to these parts and it meets at one point with the oxygenated blood, so the oxygenated becomes oxygenated. Okay, and that is the time that blood flows through different parts of the body, going to the lungs, going to the body, okay, going to the heart, and this is where it takes place. So in the capillaries, there is an exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, so let's go to blood. Of course, inside our blood vessels, there is what you call blood. And inside our blood, there are different kinds of components. We have the red blood cells and the platelets. Okay, red blood cells, platelets, white blood cell, and plasma. So what are these cells for? Red blood cells are the ones that carries the oxygen inside our body. It goes through the different parts of the arteries. Okay, the platelets are the ones that fixes all of the parts in our body that is wounded or somehow scratched. So it creates a net or a network of platelets to cover the wounds inside our body. It heals. In short, it's the healer inside our body. And we have the white blood cells that fights against bacteria and viruses. So these are very important. But too much white blood cell can also result to another form of disorder or disease. So it may result to cancer, or somehow it could probably a viral infection. So too much accumulation of white blood cell in our body might be a malfunction inside our blood. So it is determined through our CBC or laboratories. Okay. Next is the plasma. The plasma is the liquid part inside the blood vessel that allows the platelets, the red blood cells, the white blood cells to flow inside the blood or the blood vessel. Okay, so it's the watery material or the fluid-like material inside the blood vessel. All right. Okay, thank you so much, and that's it. More about the circulatory system. All right, now we have in here the three kinds of circulation. We call them as the pulmonary circuit or the pulmonary circulation. And we have the systemic circuit or the systemic circulation. Also the additional, which is not indicated in here, but we call this as the coronary circulation, which you can see in your module. Okay, let me explain this in a very quick way. So when you say pulmonary circulation or pulmonary circuit, from the heart going to the lungs and then lungs back to the heart. Okay, that's pulmonary. So heart, lungs, lungs, heart. Systemic circuit refers to the kind of circulation where it is coming from the heart, going to the different parts of the body, excluding the lungs. Okay, so from the heart going to the parts of the body and then going to the heart again. And then the heart, of course, it has its own function, of course. So there's a coronary circulation where the circulation only happens for the inside and the tissues, repairs of the heart. So we call that as coronary circulation. Okay, so thank you so much, and that's it all about the three kinds of circulation inside our body. Now we're on to our last part of our video lecture. This is more about the picture analysis, and you already know now what are the different parts and functions of circulatory system and respiratory system. By this time, you're going to relate and also reflect based on the picture, how does SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 affect our respiratory and circulatory system? Okay, and you are going to cite 5 best ways or practices to help prevent this communicable disease. This is a very timely issue and topic in science, so I hope that you can also understand the effects of our body if we have COVID-19 or a coronavirus inside our respiratory and circulatory system. So what happens to our body if that happens? Okay, so you are given a free time for this one and try to reflect of some best ways and practices. Okay, bye for now. And this is the end of our module or lesson for today. So I hope that this video helps you somehow, and I hope that I am of help to you. This is April G. Datahan, Teacher 1 of JV for Yale's National High School, saying, there is always a little scientist inside you. Bye for now. See you soon. Bye.